Chosen one, listen carefully. If you felt misunderstood, falsely judged, or watched people believe lies about you without ever asking your side, this message is not random. There is a reason the truth is surfacing now. For a long time, people questioned your character, your intentions, and your silence. But what they didn't realize is that silence was never weakness. It was restraint, it was wisdom, and it was protection. The lies worked for a moment, but moments don't beat consistency. Now people are seeing what you always knew. The stories are falling apart. The masks are slipping. And the truth about you is becoming undeniable. If you've noticed a shift in how people treat you, if respect is replacing doubt, if conversations feel different lately, this video will explain exactly why. Stay with me until the end, because the final message will confirm what season you've just entered and why you no longer need to explain yourself to anyone. And before we begin, take 1 second to support this message. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment, "I stand in truth," so this energy reaches every chosen one who needs it right now. Chosen one, understand this clearly and without hesitation. People do not lie about you because you are weak. They lie about you because your existence disrupts their comfort. Your presence challenged the stories they told themselves. You didn't have to announce who you were. You didn't have to prove anything. Simply by being authentic, you exposed the shortcuts, the masks, and the compromises others were hiding behind. That kind of quiet truth makes insecure people restless. You moved differently. You stood firm where others folded. You stayed disciplined where others looked for easy exits. And that made them uncomfortable. In a world where many perform for approval, you chose alignment. In environments where manipulation is normalized, you chose principle. When people realized they couldn't pull you into their patterns, they felt threatened. And when people feel threatened, they don't self-reflect. They deflect. That's when the stories start. They couldn't say you lacked integrity because you had it. They couldn't say you were inconsistent because you were steady. They couldn't say you were fake because your actions matched your words. So instead, they attacked your image. They labeled you too much because they felt inadequate. They called you difficult because you wouldn't comply. They said you were selfish because you set boundaries. They implied you were arrogant because you didn't shrink. They painted you as ungrateful because you didn't owe loyalty to dysfunction. Notice how subtle that is. They didn't accuse you of doing something wrong. They accused you of being something wrong. That's the tactic. Character attacks require evidence. Image attacks only require repetition. Chosen ones are often misunderstood because they don't fit into predictable boxes. You don't move by groupthink. You don't bend just to belong. And that independence is dangerous to people who rely on control to feel safe. Here's the truth most never realize. When people cannot control you, they try to control the narrative about you. They whisper instead of confront. They suggest instead of speak directly. They plant doubts instead of asking questions. Not because you harmed them, but because you refused to be owned by them. And deep down, they knew something else too. If others truly got to know you without interference, the lies wouldn't stand a chance. So they acted preemptively. They shaped perceptions before truth could speak. They framed you before your consistency could be seen. They tried to define you before your character could reveal itself. But here's what they underestimated. Truth doesn't need urgency. Truth doesn't need defense. Truth only needs time. While they were busy maintaining a false version of you, you were quietly becoming undeniable. And the very consistency that once made them uncomfortable would eventually expose the cracks in their story. Chosen one, never forget this. You were lied about not because you lacked value, but because your value couldn't be controlled. And that is always where lies are born. Let's talk about something uncomfortable, but necessary. For a season, the lies worked. People believed what they heard without verifying it. Some pulled back without explanation. Others watched you through a lens that wasn't yours, judging quietly, treating you differently, forming opinions without ever asking for your truth. And yes, that hurt more than you probably admitted out loud. Because what hurts most isn't being disliked. It's being misunderstood in silence. But here's the deeper truth. This phase was not punishment. It was preparation. You were being trained to stop reaching for external validation. If people had defended you immediately, you might have mistaken support for self-worth. If everyone had believed you right away, you might have stayed emotionally dependent on approval to feel secure. Instead, you were pushed inward. You were forced to sit with yourself without applause, to trust your own integrity without witnesses, to stand firm without confirmation. And that's not easy. There were moments you questioned yourself, moments you wondered if speaking up would help or make things worse. Moments when isolation felt heavier than the lies themselves. But in that silence, something powerful was happening. You were building inner authority. While others were busy maintaining narratives, you were strengthening your core. You learned how to validate yourself. You learned how to stay grounded when misunderstood. You learned that your truth does not require an audience to be real. This is what most people never understand. Lies often spread faster than truth, but they decay faster too. Lies rely on momentum. They need repetition, emotion, and reaction to survive. The moment you stop feeding them with explanations, defenses, or emotional responses, they start losing power. Truth works differently. Truth is patient. Truth is consistent. Truth shows up the same way every day. And you did exactly that. You stayed steady. You stayed respectful. You stayed aligned with who you are. And over time, the contrast became impossible to ignore. People began noticing that your actions didn't match the story they were told. Your consistency didn't line up with the accusations. Your calm didn't reflect the chaos described about you. That's when doubt entered their minds, not about you, but about the narrative. They started thinking, something doesn't add up. This doesn't feel right. This isn't what I expected. And that's when lies start cracking. Not because you confronted them, not because you exposed anyone, but because time gave people space to observe instead of react. Chosen one, understand this. The lies were allowed to work temporarily so you could grow permanent strength. What you gained in that season can never be taken from you. Emotional independence, self-trust, and inner stability are earned through moments like these. And now, as the truth begins surfacing naturally, you're no longer waiting for validation. You're no longer dependent on perception. You're no longer shaken by misunderstanding, because you know who you are. And when truth finally arrives, as it always does, it doesn't just clear your name, it confirms your growth. That's why the lies didn't last. They were never built to withstand time. Chosen one, the shift didn't announce itself. There were no public apologies, no dramatic confessions, no moment where everyone suddenly admitted they were wrong. That's not how truth usually reveals itself. It happened quietly, almost invisibly. At some point, people stopped listening to what was being said about you and started watching how you actually lived. They paid attention to your behavior instead of the narrative. They noticed your consistency. They observed how you carried yourself when no one was clapping, praising, or protecting you. And that observation changed everything. They watched how you spoke, not just what you said. They noticed how you handled pressure without turning bitter. They paid attention to how you treated people who had nothing to offer you in return. And slowly, without confrontation, the illusion weakened. They realized something important. Your actions didn't match the story they were given. You didn't gossip when it would have been easy. You didn't retaliate when you had every excuse to. You didn't expose anyone even when you knew the truth. You didn't chase validation or try to win people back. Instead, you stayed grounded. And that kind of consistency forces people to think. They began replaying past conversations in their minds. They started noticing contradictions in the narrative. They questioned why someone who was described as negative, manipulative, or selfish moved with such restraint and dignity. That's when the thought appeared. Maybe we were wrong. Not all at once, not out loud, but internally. And that internal doubt was more powerful than any argument you could have made. Because when people reach that realization on their own, it sticks. Soon, something else started happening. The same people who once doubted you began defending you in conversations you weren't even part of. They pushed back gently when your name came up. They asked questions instead of accepting accusations. They started noticing patterns in the people who originally spread the lies. And the ones who created the narrative felt it. They grew uneasy, because liars are confident only when their version goes unchallenged. The moment silence replaces agreement, they feel exposed. The moment people stop reacting emotionally, their control weakens. Nothing unsettles someone who lives in deception more than a calm person who doesn't need to explain themselves. Your silence wasn't avoidance. It wasn't fear. It wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. You understood that defending yourself would have kept you trapped in their story. So you stepped out of it entirely. You let time do what arguments never could. And time did exactly what it always does. It revealed patterns. It exposed inconsistencies. It allowed truth to rise without force. Now, the truth doesn't need to be announced. It's visible. It's felt. It's recognized in how people approach you differently, in the pause before they speak, in the respect that didn't exist before. Chosen one, the truth is louder now, not because you raised your voice, but because you never lowered your standards, and once truth reaches that level, no lie can compete with it. This is where karma becomes precise. Not dramatic, not loud, not vengeful, surgical. Chosen one, notice something important. You didn't have to expose anyone. You didn't gather evidence. You didn't call meetings. You didn't defend your reputation with aggression. Life handled it. Over time, the very traits they projected onto you began surfacing in their own behavior. The manipulation they accused you of became visible in how they controlled conversations. The inconsistency they claimed you had showed up in their shifting stories. The insecurity they assigned to you revealed itself through their need for constant validation. People started connecting the dots on their own. Patterns don't lie. When someone repeatedly accuses others of the same things, attention eventually turns back to the source. Observers begin noticing contradictions. They see how the person's actions don't align with their words. They sense the tension of someone maintaining a version of themselves that isn't natural. And here's the part most people never anticipate. Those who lied about you are now trapped. Trapped in the image they created. Trapped in the story they must protect. Trapped in a role that requires constant performance. They have to remember what they said, to whom, and in what version. They have to stay alert, always watching reactions, always adjusting narratives. There's no rest in deception. That's why they're exhausted. That's why they're anxious. That's why they seem restless, even when things appear calm. A person living in truth moves freely. A person living in lies moves cautiously. Meanwhile, you're not burdened by any of that. You sleep peacefully because your conscience is clear. You move authentically because you never had to pretend. You don't rehearse conversations in your head or fear being exposed because there's nothing to hide. This is how the universe balances the scales, not through public humiliation, not through dramatic downfall, but through quiet credibility loss. People stop fully trusting them. They may not confront them, but they stop relying on their words. They listen with skepticism. They keep emotional distance. They verify instead of believe. And once credibility fades, influence disappears. Because influence is built on trust, and trust cannot survive inconsistency. They didn't just lose control of the narrative about you. They lost control over how they themselves are perceived. And that loss is far more damaging than any argument you could have won. Chosen one, this is why you were told to stay calm. This is why you were guided not to react emotionally. The universe needed space to reveal truth without interference. When you stay aligned, karma doesn't rush. It waits for the right moment, then acts with precision. And the lesson is simple, but powerful. Lying about someone who lives in integrity doesn't destroy them. It exposes the liar. That is the real cost. And that is why you are still standing, unburdened, unafraid, and free. Chosen one, this is the most important part of the entire journey. You are entering a season where your energy speaks before your words do. A season where explanations are no longer required and where silence carries more authority than defense ever could. You no longer explain yourself. You no longer overshare to be understood. You no longer defend a past that already taught its lessons. You no longer chase understanding from people who were committed to misunderstanding you. And people feel that shift immediately. They approach you differently now. There's a pause before they speak, as if they're measuring their words. The tone is softer, the posture more respectful. Where there was once judgment, there is now curiosity. Where there was dismissal, there is now awareness. They may not say it out loud, but they sense something has changed. Some will try to reconnect, drawn by the calm confidence you carry. Some will act as if nothing ever happened, hoping time erased what they never addressed. Some will offer indirect apologies, subtle acknowledgments wrapped in casual conversation. You don't owe any of them closure. Closure is not something you give to others. Closure is what happens when you outgrow the need to explain. Your growth is the closure. Your peace is the response. Your continued alignment is the proof they cannot argue with. You're no longer trying to be understood. You're simply being yourself. And that authenticity commands a level of respect that explanation never could. This is what happens when you stop defending your truth and start embodying it. People sense that you're no longer available for chaos, manipulation, or emotional labor that doesn't serve you. They recognize that access to you now requires intention, respect, and honesty. And not everyone will qualify. That's not arrogance, that's discernment. You've learned the difference between connection and attachment. You understand that being at peace is more valuable than being liked. You know now that your energy is sacred and you protect it accordingly. Remember this, truth does not rush. It doesn't need to shout or prove itself. It doesn't beg to be believed. Truth stands quietly, consistently and confidently. And now, everyone can see it standing in you. The season ahead is not about proving who you are. It's about choosing where your presence belongs. You no longer walk into rooms seeking acceptance. You enter spaces already grounded in self-respect. Those who recognize your value will meet you there. Those who don't will feel the distance. And that distance is not punishment, it's alignment. Chosen one, this is your season of quiet authority. A season where respect arrives without explanation, where peace replaces justification, and where your life speaks on your behalf. Stand firm, stay aligned, and let your presence continue to say everything that needs no words. Chosen one, as this message comes to a close, understand this clearly. Nothing you went through was wasted. Every misunderstanding, every false judgment, every moment of isolation was shaping the strength you now carry. What once felt like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like silence was protection. And what felt like delay was alignment unfolding in your favor. You don't need to replay the past anymore. You don't need to wonder who believed what or who said what behind closed doors. That season has ended. The truth has already done its work, not through arguments or explanations, but through time and consistency. People see you now, not the version that was spoken about, but the version that showed up, stayed steady, and never compromised their integrity. And here's the most powerful part. You didn't lose yourself trying to be understood. You didn't lower your standards to be accepted. You didn't betray your values just to fit in. That alone sets you apart. Many people seek peace later in life. You earned it early through discipline, self-respect, and restraint. As you move forward, remember this. Your job is not to correct perception. Your job is to stay aligned. The right people will recognize you without explanation. The wrong people will feel the distance without you needing to create it. That's not coldness. That's clarity. There will be moments when old connections resurface. Some will test boundaries to see if you're still the same. Some will approach with curiosity. Some will offer subtle apologies without naming them. You don't need to confront or correct any of it. Let your presence answer for you. Let your peace speak louder than words ever could. You are entering a phase where respect follows you naturally, where your silence carries weight, where your absence is felt more than your presence ever was before. That's what happens when you stop trying to be understood and start standing fully in who you are. Stay grounded, stay consistent, stay true to yourself, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching, because integrity is not proven in crowds, it's proven in solitude. If this message resonated with you, don't ignore that feeling. It's confirmation. You were never alone, and you were never wrong. You were simply ahead of the truth, reaching others. Before you go, take a moment to support this message so it reaches others who need it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment that says, "I stand in my truth." Your engagement helps this message find every chosen one who's still questioning their worth. Until next time, keep walking in alignment. The truth is with you, and now everyone else can see it too.